Welcome to the WORKOLOGY podcast, a podcast for the disruptive workplace leader. Join host Jessica Miller-Merrill, founder of WORKOLOGY.com, as she sits down and gets to the bottom of trends, tools, and case studies for the business leader, HR, and recruiting professional who is tired of the status quo. Now here's Jessica with this episode of WORKOLOGY.
Welcome to this WORKOLOGY podcast episode sponsored by Clear Company. 2 years after Hillary Clinton became the first woman to win the presidential nomination of a major U.S. political party, and with a record number of women running for Congress in 2018, a majority of Americans say they would like to see more women in top leadership positions in both politics but also the corporate world. This data comes to us from a Pew Research study, which is very robust. But most say that men still have an easier path to the top and that women have to do more to prove their worth. And the public is still skeptical that the country will ever achieve gender parity in politics and business. I'm talking today about workplace politics and how to run for office in human resources. I'm joined by Wendy Berry. She is an employee relations HR representative at Fairview Health Services and is a candidate for City Council office in West St. Paul, Minnesota's 3rd Ward. Wendy, welcome to the WORKOLOGY podcast.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me today.
Let's talk a little bit about your career in HR. How did you find your way into human resources?
Yeah, that's my favorite question about human resources because it was an accident. I had no idea that I wanted to be in human resources or really what that even meant. But I had been doing inside sales prior to that and was not good at it. And so, was looking for something else and wound up doing recruiting for an agency. So technically it was inside sales, but I didn't look at it that way and really enjoyed it. Really loved kind of putting those puzzle pieces together, finding the right people for the right job, and just kind of grew that HR career from there for the past 10 years or so.
Well, the podcast episode is all about workplace politics and then running for office while in human resources. And I felt like you are no better person in my mind to talk about this subject because you're running for city council. So can you talk about the why behind that and maybe the how?
Yeah, sure. So also by accident, but the town I live in, West St. Paul, it's about 20,000 people. It's a suburb right off of Minneapolis and St. Paul. And there's a lot of contention right now with our city council and has been for the past couple of years. We have an amazing mayor. Her name is Jenny Halverson, and she's fantastic. And then we have a 6-person city council, which is all male. The last couple of years, there's been a lot of, sexism and not wanting to fill different city committees with females when those were the only ones that were applying and that sort of thing. And, it kind of came up as a joke, in a Facebook group, people were talking about someone wanting to run for city council against a person in my ward whose term was expiring. And I was like, I'll do it. And it escalated. And so, I had a sit down meeting with the mayor and just asked her about it and, what it was like. And, when she ran for city council, what was it like for her? And, she asked what my biggest concern was about running. And I said, I have no idea what being on city council means. And she said she didn't either the first time that she did it, and just kind of explained that there are resources and you'll figure it out. And you don't have to know everything. And that's how I've grown in my career. And that's hopefully how I'll grow in city council, just by learning from the people that know more. And so I'm excited to do that. And I'm excited to, be a female on city council. Our population is half female, so we should have at least one. We should have 3, we should have 6. But I'm excited to do that and actually bring back some civility to our city council, which kind of has a tendency to not be so civil. So I'm looking forward to that.
I love how brave you are and your willingness to just sort of step out and try something new and put yourself into the spotlight in an area that you really are just learning about on the fly.
It is definitely on the fly. And it's been fun, and I've learned so much from current city council people, from former ones, from former mayors, from a lot of people. A lot of people have a lot of advice about this. And we were a couple suburbs over and ran into someone and they knew who I was just from I've been in a few different news articles from different things on TV, and they just knew my name, and that was really weird for me living in a, a metropolitan area. So it's cool. It's a little weird for me, still adjusting to that, but it's cool to be known for wanting to make a difference in a good way. So I really like that.
What are some ways that you hope to positively impact your ward as a city council person? Yeah,
it's a great question. I think just by representation, just by engaging the people that live here and reaching out to our population. We have a pretty diverse population here, just being so close to a city and that sort of thing. And there has never been a proactive reach out to those people. The big hubbub a few months ago with our city council was, well, why aren't diverse people running for city council? We told them that they should. And from an HR perspective, I've had to explain multiple times that's not how tracking diversity works. You don't just say, okay, diverse people do this. You have to go out and find them. You have to talk to them. You have to educate them on things. You have to make it easy for them. You have to remove barriers. And I hope that by people seeing me, a woman on city council and someone from the LGBTQ community on city council, that it'll be one of those things where they can identify with a like person, someone that's from a community that's not represented, and realize that there's space for them at the table too. It's kind of my biggest goal, and just kind of continuing some engagement. We had a huge turnout from a primary election, and I just hope that people continue to remain engaged after the election too.
I hope so. Certainly. Let's talk a little bit about maybe some adversity. I mean, you are a minority in a sense as a woman, and then somebody in the LGBTQ community. What type of adversity or challenges have you faced thus far, and how have you worked to overcome that?
So that's a long story. Back in May, there was a city council meeting where dozens of women kind of got up and talked about the different levels of sexism that they were experiencing. And it was pretty intense. It was incredibly empowering, and it gave people a voice that they didn't have before. And since then, so let's see, it's October, so the past 5-6 months, people have actually been continuing to find screws that have been intentionally placed in their tires. So these giant acts of vandalism that have actually only taken place to either the women that have spoken out in that city council meeting, women that have spoken to the media about the sexism in our city council, or people that have my city council signs in their front yard, have experienced this sort of thing. So that's a huge adversity, and just it's appalling. But they can't really figure out who's doing it, because how do you figure that out? But it's one of those, when they go low, we go high things, and so is kind of to combat that. Here in a couple of weeks, I've been working with a female mechanic and a local garage, and we're going to be having a tire changing clinic, so women will be able to know how to do that. If they walk out into their garage or their driveway and they see their tires flat, they can swap that over and not be so stuck. So we're turning that around for a little education for the neighbors.
So I just want to back up. So women in your area that have spoken out at the city council meeting and talked openly about sexism have experienced literal, like we're not talking figuratively, but literal screws in their tires.
Yes, literal screws through tires. Sometimes people have experienced it more than once, to the point where they've had to buy new tires. It's probably close to 20 people have done it now, or have experienced it now and reported it to the police department. So, yeah.
Wow. Well, I love that you're taking a spin on this. And I love that you talk about when they go low, we go high, and you're going to provide education for women on how to change their tires and provide them with resources to be able to overcome and continue to overcome those obstacles that are being placed in their way.
Absolutely. I mean, if we remove obstacles, then we all feel better. So that's my hope.
Yeah, I love it. Well, let's take a reset. This is Jessica Miller Merrill, and you're listening to the Workology podcast sponsored by Clear Company. Today, we are talking about politics in the workplace and driving change with HR practitioner and future City Councilwoman Wendy Berry. You can connect with her on Twitter at the Wendy Berry. TheWendyBerry.
This podcast has been sponsored by Clear Company, a complete talent management platform that unifies recruiting, onboarding, performance management, and goal tracking into one award-winning solution. Visit clearcompany.com for product information.
Politics and political opinions, I feel like, are more heightened than ever before. I know this is something that you have experienced having worked in human resources and continue to work in human resources, where you've had conversations with employees who are discussing politics and work. And then the balancing act we face is remaining sort of neutral in the workplace. How do you handle this working in HR and also as someone who's running for office?
That's a tricky question. And I think 2 years ago was when that topic got even more touchy, with the 2016 presidential election. And admittedly, someone had come to me directly saying, my coworker has this sign and it's offensive to me. And right away, I jumped on that person's side. I was like, oh my gosh, me too, we got to take it down. But I had to step back. As an HR practitioner, I was like, I agree with you, and that person's entitled to their opinion too. And the sign was really big. So that's a different story. But I think it's important that we know our employees are passionate about things, and we have to let them be their true selves, and we have to let them be their true selves in a respectful manner to the people that they work with. Right now people are scared of losing their rights in some cases, and that's something we have to acknowledge. We need to offer them opportunity to be scared, and not tell them that they can't talk about it. But we just have to make sure that they're allowed to do that in a way that's safe for them too.
I think that's important. Oh, any advice for those HR pros out there that maybe a manager has come in and said somebody is, has a big sign, or they're saying things in the break room and I don't agree with that, or can you take care of this for me? Do we stop those conversations, or do you think that we should let them continue?
I think we have to let them continue. We have to let them continue in a respectful way. If someone's screaming at someone in the break room, that's different. But we have to let them continue. We can't tell people not to bring their true selves, their full selves to work, and expect that not to be part of it. As long as it remains respectful, just like any other conversation, I think it's appropriate.
I agree with you. I think that social media in particular has made it blaringly obvious that many groups of people are divided in their decisions, and sometimes the conversation isn't so friendly or nice. But if you just take a step back and be open to hearing their point of view, even if it's different than your own, you're opening the dialogue and the door for learning how to work and live with people who are different and think different than you.
Absolutely. I think that's a key component. I think we can teach people that through politics or through conversations about changing HR policies. I think they definitely come together in that aspect.
What are some ways that employers can encourage involvement in politics or being involved in local campaigns, maybe like the city council?
I think it depends on the employer. I didn't ask my current employer if it was okay. I switched employers in the middle of my campaign. I talked to my previous employer about it. I didn't really ask. I just kind of told. Thinking back, I don't know if that was the right thing, but that's what I did. With my current employer, I haven't really said too much about it. It's just been something that's just been part of who I am, and not a big reveal or a big ask. I don't know. I don't know if we need to encourage people, because it's not for everyone. I think we just need to encourage people to be able to volunteer for things they're passionate about, period. At my last job, we got 8 hours to spend out in the community as volunteer time doing whatever we want. I think that's an amazing benefit, and people can choose to do with that whatever they feel passionate about, whether it is a political campaign or it's, picking up garbage on the freeway or, volunteering at a humane society. I think that's meaningful to them, and, politics isn't for everyone. So I think spreading that out to be more meaningful is important.
What about for the individual? So let's say they're listening to you now and they're inspired by your determination and how you kind of stepped out into the spotlight and said, you know what, I'm going to try this, and I'm going to be part of the conversation and try to change not just the city, but the world. What advice do you have for someone who is thinking, wow, I want to do this too? What should they do, or maybe where should they start to get involved in politics?
It's a lot out there. I think the things that helped me the most was talking to people that are in office now. I was able to talk to the mayor, and I was able to talk to someone that's currently representing my ward. That was helpful. I also talked to some people that were in the Ward 3 position before, who shared a lot of great insight. But there are also so many places out there online that are encouraging this. Womenwinning.org is a place here in Minnesota that has a lot of resources, and they do a lot of endorsements. They endorsed me here recently, which is fantastic. The LGBTQ Victory Fund is another organization that has recently endorsed me, and it's called the Victory Institute, where they provide a lot of those things. They can tell you, what does your literature need to look like whenever you send it out. But then there's also places like She Should Run or Vote, Run, Lead. And these are just places where, people are thinking about running, but they want to know what it's like. They want to know, should I run? Am I in a position to run? How do I raise this money? What do these words even mean about running? There's a lot of resources out there, and it's not too early to start looking at it now. For people that are interested in the 2020 run, start looking now, start talking about it now, start getting people excited to support you now, and it's going to make, your campaign even easier.
I admire you so much, and I love that you're doing this. How can people support you, maybe that don't live in your area, and help you push this forward and get you into the conversation in the local, but maybe in the national community too?
Yeah, I think it's the same thing locally or nationally. Just keep talking about it. We talk about it a lot here, in different forums and conversations. And, the Facebook ads are great, or the mailers you send out are great. But the most important thing is just talking to your neighbors. And so it's just sharing stories, sharing stories about how, my supporters are finding damaged vehicles in their driveway. It's asinine. I mean, there's no reason for that behavior. Whoever's doing it is clearly feeling a little inferior or irrelevant and acting out in that way. And it's been acceptable apparently because it's just continued to be allowed. And so things like that are probably not the place to, for politics. But it's probably not the only place that's happening is here. I'm sure there are other situations out there, and I think it's important to bring them to light, not to scare people from running off or not running for office, but to show what it's like, to show people what it's really like out there. Because I think sometimes it's invisible and people don't want to talk about it because it's embarrassing, but it's important. I think it's important to mention those things too, just to see what kind of, barriers are out there.
Where can people go to learn more about you and your campaign?
Yeah, for sure. My website is just wendy4wsb.com. And then there's a link to my Facebook there as well that's updated a little more frequently. But we've got about 3 weeks until the election, so there's a lot of mailing to be done and a lot of doors to be knocked, and throwing that tire changing clinic right in the middle of it should be an exciting thing, and it'll be the next busy 3 weeks or so.
How are you managing all these different activities that you're doing? Because you're going to be knocking on a lot of doors, you're going to be speaking on podcasts like this one and talking about how you hope to make your community a better place.
Yeah, it's a lot of scheduling, a lot of timing, and a lot of completely gracious volunteers in the community that have stepped up, understood why we want this community to be better and to be more conducive to getting things done, and to be more united and helping along the way. My wife is also incredibly supportive. We have 2 little kids, and my almost 4-year-old knows what door knocking is. He's learned my full name now because they're on signs all over our town. And so, it's taking a lunch break in the middle of the day to do a podcast, or it's on the way home dropping off some yard signs, in people's lawns that have requested them. The other night we had a volunteer party, I guess you could call it, where we had about 25 people gather in someone's house to handwrite 800 postcards just to people that normally vote early or new voters, and people come together because they want to help. And so that's been like the saving grace of my campaign, is just people in the community that want to help too.
I really am inspired by what you're doing, and I love that your family is involved and supportive, and that you're able to do this. I have a 9-year-old, so I know how challenging it is when you have a job and life, but I can't imagine throwing in a run for office into the mix.
It's a lot of time. I knew it would be some time. I didn't know it would be this much time, but I think it's going to be worth it in the long run. The term is 4 years, so 4 years from now I'll have an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old, and then they can help me knock on doors when when it's time for re-election. But I think it's important. This community is our home. and I want them to grow up to see that, that different people can represent their city in different ways. And I think it's important for them to see. So, I'm happy to do it, and I'm excited to do it.
Well, connect with Wendy. We're going to include a list of resources in the transcript of this podcast. It's wendy4wsp.com is where you can go to learn more about the campaign. And I'll also have her LinkedIn information there so you can connect with her too. Thank you so much, Wendy. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it too.
At Workology, we're making HR learning and recertification simple with Learn, our on-demand learning platform providing 24/7 access to pre-approved HRCI and SHRM courses. Visit workology.com/learn to find out more. And use the discount code PODCAST to save 20% off your membership. Now, back to Jessica.
Whatever your political affiliation, the future is not only female, but it's about diversity, and it's about creating a group who is more representative of your communities, both in politics and in workplaces. Political conversations are happening at work, in break rooms, and on social media everywhere. It's important because it's a part of the fabric of our nation. And I do believe that workplace and business leaders should find ways to be supportive of their employees and their involvement, just like Wendy. Thank you for joining the Workology podcast, sponsored by Clear Company. This podcast is for the disruptive workplace leader who's tired of the status quo. This is Jessica Miller Merrill. Until next time, visit workology.com to listen to all our podcast episodes.
Production services for the Workology podcast with Jessica Miller Merrill provided by TotalPicture.com.